welcome back to Off the Post. In today's episode, I'll be discussing whether Brighton are going under the radar in the Premier League. But before that, as always, please like, comment and subscribe. It's very much appreciated and it goes a long way in helping me build a small community on my channel, okay? We've recently just hit 244 subscribers and I just want to say a massive thank you for all the support on our most recent videos, all the likes and the comments on social media as well. It definitely has gone unnoticed, and yeah, just want to say a massive thank you really. But let's get straight into the episode, shall we? Let's not waste any time. And let's continue talking about Brighton, okay? From this point of view, okay, Brighton are currently sitting in 12th place in the Premier League. They've won 2 games, drawn 3 and also lost 2. So from that point of view, they're having a very average season, if you like. However, the 2 wins they've got might surprise you, okay? They beat Chelsea 3-1 and they also beat Man City, I want to say 2-1 or something like that, I'm pretty sure. But from that point of view, okay, it is very good because, you know, they're beating a lot of big teams in the Premier League this season. However, they're sort of drawing games where you would have thought to yourself they probably should have won that, and they probably would have won that as well last season if they had some more of their creative players in their midfield and their attack as well. Obviously, they've beat some big teams. Obviously, they've drew to some teams where they probably should have won. If you think about their last result against Wolves, if they think, you know, they're sitting right bottom of the Premier League, aren't they, Wolves? And I'm pretty sure they scored a last-minute goal. So from that point of view, for Brighton, they probably should have won that game just to get another 3 points on the board. And then when you think about, like, losing against Bournemouth, okay, you know, again, Bournemouth have got a similar team. They're sort of similar positions to Brighton, if you like. You know, and for me, that game could have gone either way as well. So it was a little bit tricky losing that game, unfortunately, for Brighton. Who else? They had a good draw against Tottenham, of course. And what else? Fulham on the first day of the season, I'm pretty sure. You know, getting a 1-1 there. Losing to Everton 2-0 as well isn't great when Everton were, you know, not really. There was a bit doom and gloom last season, weren't they, Everton? But then again, obviously they've been fantastic this season. So for me, it is a bit of a tricky one. Yeah. So when we talk about some of the losses, losing to Bournemouth and Everton, it isn't great from that point of view, okay? Because they're teams that are both around them in that sort of aspect. And when you think about, you know, winning to the likes of Man City and Chelsea, if you could have beat, you know, Bournemouth and Everton as well, your season would be completely different, wouldn't they? They'd probably be in the top 6, wouldn't they, at this point? They'd probably be in, like, at Bournemouth's point of view. It really does go to show, if you've got those difference makers in your team, those goal scorers in your team, you know, it will elevate your league position, if you like, because if you look at Bournemouth being in the top 6 at the moment because of Semenyo scoring all those goals, I don't know whether or not Brighton has one of those players. Yes, they've got Minter. Yes, they've got Matoma. Yes, they've got Danny Welbeck. However, are they, you know, are they good enough quality in those, you know, attacking areas to score those goals consistently enough? I'm not too sure. Don't get me wrong, I do like all 3 of those players. Is it enough quality in the final thirds to be consistent, to score the goals, you know, week in, week out? You know, even if it's scoring you a goal every 2 or 3 games, do they do enough for that Brighton side? I'm not too sure if they do. Obviously, Brighton have some good midfield defensive options in the likes of Carlos Baleba, James Milner, Jack Hinshelwood, I'm pretty sure how to pronounce his name. However, when you think about their, you know, creative options in the midfield, they don't really have anybody of note that I can really, you know, put out there, you know, in that sort of, you know, number 8 and number 10 position, if you like. Don't get me wrong, they've got some good wingers, but are those, you know, midfielders going to be creating the opportunities for the wingers? I'm not too sure, because obviously you've got Matoma, you've got Tommy Watson, you've got Minter in there. However, are those sort of like midfielder options, those number 8s and number 10s doing enough to, you know, play those through balls, play those 1-2 tiki-taka sort of passes into those wingers? I'm just not too sure. And for me, I don't know. I feel like that's where sort of Brighton's side is letting them down in that sort of creative number 8 and number 10 position, as well as probably their defence and goalkeeper conceding 1 or 2 goals they probably wouldn't have last season. They probably, you know, Brighton are always a team that do concede quite a few goals from last season, from a few seasons ago. They're always a side that concede, you know, 2 to 3 goals a game, I want to say, but they'll always outscore the opposition. However, this season, they're not really doing that, except from, obviously, the Man City and Chelsea game. So even though I'm saying, you know, they've had a bit of a rocky start, they've had a bit of an average start to the season, I do feel like they do have a good enough squad to sort of go under the radar, because if you think about teams around them at the moment, in the likes of Everton, Sunderland, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, all these different teams, they are playing better than them at the moment. However, you got to think to yourself, will some of those teams fall off, and will Brighton sort of go about their business quite quietly, go up and climb up the table, if you like? I feel like they will do. Don't get me wrong, I feel like that 12th position is almost a false position in the league at the moment, just because if they can turn some of those draws into wins, like I mentioned at the start of the video, I really do feel like Brighton can get a top 10 this season. It's just whether or not they can go and get, Europa Conference League, Europa League once again, because they've done that a few times in recent seasons, haven't they? I'm pretty sure they got Europa League a few seasons ago. I don't think they were in Europe this season, I'm pretty sure, are they? Maybe let me know in the comments down below, Brighton fans, because I'm not too sure, I can't really remember. I don't think they are. But yeah, I do really like their attacking options, because obviously they've got Danny Welbeck, who's Mr. Consistent. I spoke about him a few weeks ago, being one of the most reliable strikers in the league. Again, I just don't know whether or not he can score you goals, week in, week out, or whether he'll score you goals every 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks, I don't know. But you got Danny Welbeck, who does score goals here and there. You've got Ruta, who also scores goals here and there. You've got Minta, and then you've got the 2 Greek young strikers, don't you, as well? I don't even want to try and pronounce their names. Obviously, you've got Tilemaz and you've got Kostelas. Hopefully, I've said those 2 young Greek strikers' names correctly. Probably haven't I? So don't hate me, guys, in the comments down below. I do apologise. I do need to get better at pronouncing people's names. I do understand that. But yeah, I really do feel like, even though Brighton haven't had the best start to the season, they can really kick on from here, but especially in the game against Newcastle now, because when you think about Newcastle as a team, they're also sitting in 11th, and have also had a very similar season to Brighton. They're both sitting on 9 points, aren't they? Obviously, Newcastle are slightly ahead of them in 11th, just because of goal difference and whatnot. I feel like they've conceded less goals than Brighton have. However, this game can go either way for me, because they're very, very similar teams at the moment in the Premier League. I want to predict in this game, just quickly, I reckon Brighton are at home, so I think Brighton can go and get a nice, comfortable 2-0 win. Okay, that might surprise a few people here, but I honestly do feel like Brighton can do the business at home, can't they? Obviously, Newcastle, they want to build on their good run of form, obviously beating Nottingham Forest 2-0 before the international break. However, I don't know, I reckon Brighton can go and get another surprise victory against a big team in the Premier League. Okay, maybe that's how their season will go. Do good against the relegation sides, struggle against the teams around them, and then they'll do good against the big teams as well, the top 6 in the Premier League. We've already seen it this season with Man City and Chelsea beating both of those sides, so maybe they can do the same thing against Newcastle as well. So we'll have to wait and see. And obviously Newcastle, I'm pretty sure they've got a Champions League fixture as well. After the Brighton game, I'm pretty sure they're playing Benfica in there. So maybe they might try and play a weaker side against Brighton to try and get a victory, to try and rest up their players and try and get a victory. So maybe we might see a weaker Newcastle side. We'll have to wait and see. It might go into Brighton's favour. We'll have to see whether or not that will be the case. However, I'm going to predict a 2-0 win. Why not? And yeah, let's end the video with some questions, okay? How do you guys feel about Brighton's season? Do you feel like they've had a pretty average start? How do you feel about them going under the radar this season? Do you think they can qualify for the Europa Conference League, for the Europa League once again? What do you feel like the score will be against Newcastle? Do you think they can get a surprise victory against Newcastle? Could they get a comfortable 2-0 win like I've predicted? And yeah, before that, as always, please like, comment and subscribe. It's very much appreciated, and it goes a long way in helping me build a small community on my channel. Okay, we've recently just hit 244 subscribers. If we can reach 250, I'd be absolutely over the moon. I'll be so happy, and yeah, I can't thank you guys enough, really. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.